Cheating best friends! The motors whirred almost inaudibly as they lowered Paula's casket into the ground. Mourners threw roses on the coffin as it was lowered, and then everyone left, showing me in their own way that they were still with me. A tearful hug, a firm handshake, a gentle shake of the forearm. Finally, there were only a handful of people left. My son Will, my daughter Jenny, my best friend of 30 years Aaron, and his wife of 24 years Becca. My children grieved the way children do, experiencing for the first time the painful confusion that life eventually brings upon us, the way we feel when the benchmark that has always been there for us is suddenly gone forever. But children don't know what it feels like when someone enters their life, changes it completely, and then leaves too soon. The pain doesn't get less, but it's different. It's expected, just part of growing up. The other we hope to avoid at all costs. Becca and I both felt it that day. Becca had been my wife's best friend for almost as long as I had been Aaron's friend. Aaron and I had met in high school colleges, and Becca and Paula shared a room in college. Paula and I were dating then, and as a result, Becca and Aaron met. The four of us experienced all the ups and downs of our adult lives. I knew Aaron was grieving too, even though he had never been as close to Paula as Becca had been, at least near the end. Becca was never as close to me as Aaron either, and she and I will never be close now. I think he grieved my pain, as befits a friend. I knew he was grieving his wife's pain, just as I would if our positions were reversed. But I knew then that our positions could never have been reversed. We were too different, though I never admitted it to myself until recently. My children hugged me tightly and then mumbled a few words about it being time to go home and pack. Paula had died mid-semester in college, and Jenny needed to get back to school before she fell behind. Will had recently started a new job, and his paid vacation time was up. I kissed my daughter on the cheek and said goodbye to them. They offered me a ride, but I declined, determined to spend some more time with their godparents. Once the kids were out of earshot, I turned to Becca. She pulled me to her and kissed my cheek, whispering, "I'm so sorry, Frank. She loved you so much, and I know you loved her more than, well, more than anything in the world." Becca stammered the last word, realizing she'd unknowingly said something hurtful. I loved my wife, maybe a little too much. I nodded and pulled away, leaving Paula's closest friend with a look of shame and regret on her face. Aaron moved toward me, arms wide, but I pushed him away, getting ready to leave. He looked at me confused. "Frank?" Then again, more pitifully, "Frank, come on, buddy, what?" He stopped, his expression contorted with painful understanding and something akin to betrayal. On any other day I might have laughed. "Frank, buddy, please don't go. Let's talk. We can work this out." I walked a few more meters and looked over my shoulder. "I never want to see either of you again. Never." Aaron took a step, but his wife put her hand on his forearm, holding him back with a light touch. It's a little late for that, I thought bitterly. Nevertheless, Paula loved her. "I'm sorry for your loss, Becca." She nodded, frowning. My former best friend called out to me one last time, almost pleading, "Frank!" Now all three of us felt the same pain, this cruel, hard-won knowledge of a love found and lost. But of all of us, I was the only one who had prepared for it fully. 6 months later. My wife's death had greatly upset Jenny, but she still managed to graduate with honors. I knew Paula would be glowing with pride. Her godparents, too, though I'd only seen them from a distance at the graduation. Becca and Aaron had consciously chosen a life without children, and our children were the closest thing they had to a son and daughter. After the funeral, my former friends did not honor my wishes, especially Aaron, who repeatedly tried to contact me. At graduation, however, I managed to stay away from them. Jenny noticed this, but all I did was tell her that we had a fight, and she shouldn't get involved. She kept pushing and pushing, until I told her in no uncertain terms that I wasn't going to discuss the subject, and that there was no chance of reconciliation. I should have realized that this would only encourage her to intervene. My daughter has so much of her mom in her. Still, when I walked into Jenny's apartment a couple months later and saw my former best friend and his wife sitting there, I couldn't resist asking, "What the hell?" My daughter's eyes went wide at that swear word. I hardly ever swear in front of my kids. Daddy, I lashed out at her. I told you I don't want to talk to them. Aaron and Becca spoke at the same time. Frank, please. Buddy, don't, I growled. Don't you dare call me Buddy. Dad! My eyes went back to my daughter. I told you I don't want to talk to them anymore. I can't believe you ambushed me like this. Becca said, Frank, please, we begged her. Aaron, we both missed you so much. I didn't miss you, not at all. Frank, come on, that's not true. Jenny told us that you've been home alone this whole time and, were you spying for them? No, Dad, no, of course not. But I'm worried about you. All four of you were always going out together. Hell, Uncle Aaron and Aunt Becca were always at our house when I was growing up. Yeah, well, we all make mistakes. I point my finger at my former friends. Take this as a lesson, Jenny. Be careful who you trust. Some people are just waiting to stab you in the back. You don't even know what they did to me. Jenny wrapped her arms around her shoulders, rubbing one arm, and looked away embarrassed. I know, Daddy. Aunt Becca told me about what you did for Mom, about what the three of you did for her. My jaw dropped as I tried to find my voice. I know how much pain you're in. I was shaking with rage, trying not to scream in her face, but it was only partially successful. You have no idea how much pain I'm in, you... I struggled to keep the word brat off my tongue and turned my anger on her godmother with a snarl. I only asked for one thing, Becca. One thing. One thing. I asked you not to tell anyone about what happened, and you couldn't even do that. God, you're a fucking idiot. You always had leg problems when we were kids, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised that you can't keep your mouth shut. Aaron stood up. Hey, watch what you say to my... What? The cheater you sent to comfort me while you sleep with my wife? He made a move on me. Do it, asshole. Give me a reason, a legitimate reason, to kick your ass. That stopped him. Not because he was afraid of me, per se. Aaron had never been a physical coward. Moral, yes, but not physical. But he's also a lawyer, and the words legal excuse hit him like a bucket of cold water on the head. I regretted telling them. I would have loved to punch him in the face, but I shouldn't have gone to jail for it. It was probably for the best. A neurosurgeon can't afford to hurt his hands. Yeah, that's what I thought. Brave enough to molest my dying wife, but not brave enough to stand up for my own when the decisive moment comes. I glanced at Becca. But he doesn't know the whole story either, does he? Paula's best friend froze. Frank, please. No. You have no right to ask me to do anything. You started this whole thing. My gaze shifted to Jenny for a moment. Have you told anyone else? Dad! No! Of course not! You can trust me! I couldn't help but snort, and she frowned and muttered in response. I know I wasn't very good at keeping secrets in the past when I was a kid, but... Jenny, I sighed. For heaven's sake, you couldn't even keep your mom's surprise birthday party a secret for a week. And that was 2 years ago. You weren't a kid anymore. That's not... Shaking my head, I looked at Becca again. Really? You went to her, my wonderful, sweet, open-as-a-book daughter, and told her this horrible secret about me, about my dead wife, about her mother, for God's sake. You told her knowing who and what she was, knowing there was no way she could keep quiet about it for longer than a microsecond, and... Hey! I ignored my daughter's protest. So yeah, you'll get exactly the same courtesy you gave me, I'm not. You opened that can of worms, now you can choke on them. A look of fear flashed across Becky's face. Jenny's expression froze somewhere between anger and confusion. I suppose the former was due to my disdain for her and the latter to the slow realization that maybe Aunt Jenny hadn't told her everything. Aaron was surprised by my words, but he was even more surprised when I pulled him aside and lowered himself into a chair from IKEA, leaving him, his wife, and my daughter to choose between a similarly designed sofa bed and a Scotch bag chair wrapped in duct tape. Jenny, like a good hostess, chose the latter, leaving her godparents with a less than pleasant option. As they sat down, I craned my neck. So, why don't we start with what she told you, Jenny? Aaron entered the conversation. Frank, I'm the one who told her the story. She called me, worried about you, and, well, I don't understand. Really, dude, I don't get it at all. Everything was fine before the funeral and... Ha! He always made me laugh. It wasn't fine at all, but at least it explains a couple things, like why Jenny didn't kick you both out of here. I mean, she would if she knew the truth, wouldn't she, Becca? Aaron's wife opened her mouth to speak, but I shook my head. Just tell me what you know, Jenny, or what you think you know. My daughter looked at each of the three of us in turn, then slowly began. I know that my mom was sick. Cancer. I mean, I was there at the end for a while, and I saw... She wiped one eye with a tissue. Uncle Aaron said she had a to-do list, and you helped her accomplish most of it. But there was one item that she'd never had anyone but you, and it bothered her. She told you that she wanted to be with someone, and... I felt my lips curl into a grimace. I didn't need to hide my anger anymore, and I didn't. Dad, I know you're hurting, but I think it's so beautiful. To love her, to let her fantasize, even if it hurts you, and to hide from her that you're hurting too. I know that Aunt Becca was hurting too because, because it was with Uncle Frank. But I also know that you and her, well, her cheeks turned pink. You've reconciled, so I don't know why you're so angry. Uncle Aaron says it's probably your ego that's hurt, but I don't. The growl turned to a harsh laugh. Is that what you think? What they told you? That we all sat down together and decided to cross one item off her to-do list? That we collectively gave her this gift, and now that, because Aaron turned out to be such a phenomenal lover or whatever, my ego is making me shut them out? She glanced at Becca, who averted her eyes, then looked at Aaron, who smiled encouragingly at her. God, what an asshole. And an idiot, too, apparently. Well, that made two of us. Jenny swallowed, but her voice still squeaked. Isn't that right? No, it's not. I have a lot more reasons to be angry than that, don't you, Rebecca? I could see the wheels spinning in her eyes as she tried to formulate a response, weighing what exactly I could and couldn't say, given the presence of my daughter in the room. Bad choice, Becca, I thought to myself. To begin with, I was the last person to be included in this little discussion. By the time your mom came to see me along with your godparents, it had already been decided. Aaron's encouraging smile faded as I continued. But let's go back even further. Yes, your mom had cancer. Brain cancer. Glioblastoma multiforme to be exact. I know we didn't talk too much about specifics because I didn't want you to... I frowned, and my voice trembled slightly. You, my little girl. I wanted to protect you from the worst of it. From the worst of it all. Because I'd watched the events unfold often enough in my practice, I knew how bad it was going to be. And I knew. I pulled a handkerchief out of my pocket and blotted my eyes. Paula always laughed about it. Called me an old man for always carrying it around. That memory made me smile briefly, but only briefly. While still in medical school, in an ER practice, I learned how different people can be when they realize they are dying. Big tough guys mourn their mothers, wives spit venom at their husbands, fathers decide that all they want to do in the last 3 months of their lives is get as far away from their children as possible. It's worst with a brain tumor, and it's even worse when it's as aggressive as your mom's. Then it's not just a matter of a premonitory epiphany, it's a brain malfunction. The tumor is pressing on places it shouldn't. I glanced at my former friends. And sometimes it destroys the ability to regulate emotion, impulse control. Jenny furrowed her eyebrows. But Mom, she'd never acted differently. Was just a mom. Smiling sadly, I said, that's what we wanted you to believe. Your mom and I made sure you only saw her when she was either at her best or at her worst. As fast as things would go near the end, well, you were in college. You'd come home, but mostly in the beginning and then at the end when she was bedridden. Before the tumor changed her a lot, and then when she was so visibly ill that her behavior, well, it didn't matter. Toward the end, she was taking so many painkillers that I could blame the changes on that. But I wasn't always able to keep you at bay. Remember Christmas? How manic she was. My daughter nodded slowly. Yes, I thought... We knew we had a little more time to be together. I thought she was trying to... Make the most of it. Make the memories matter. In a way, they did. But she was also starting to lose control. I don't know if you remember how much she drank, or... I grinned. Or the noise she made later that night. Jenny's cheeks went from pink to bright red. Normally, when you kids came to visit, we didn't do much, or at least we tried to be inconspicuous. But by then, your mom had lost the self-control she needed. I gave her something to, slow down the rest of the time you were home. She freaked out. You drugged her? I didn't drug her. I offered her a very light sedative, and she agreed. We both wanted you to remember her fondly, not as a stranger in her body that I had to see as the tumor grew. Neither of us wanted that for you or your brother. And I never would have told you any of this if... Her godparents would have slumped under my gaze. They kept their promises. Aaron's tone was somewhere between sympathetic and reproachful, like a father trying to get his child to confess something he might be punished for. Frank, come on. She hasn't changed that much. I mean, at the end, sure, but not when... Well, not when we had our date. Bullshit. You were barely around when she got sick. It was always Becca coming to see her, not you. We hung out with you, and Paula hung out with Becca. Every once in a while, we'd all do something on her wish list together, like skydiving, which didn't require you to hang out with her much, but that was the end of the group activities. You never could stand being around sick people. I remember you went to the hospital exactly once when I was interning in the emergency room and almost passed out. But Becca knew, did you? Aaron's wife gritted her teeth and coldly defended herself. It wasn't like that. Yes, she was sick, but God, Frank, you treated her like a porcelain doll. Paula wanted to break free and live, after all. Seize the moment. She wanted the best of life. Food, drink, dancing, and yes, love. And no offense, but you were both virgins when you got together. She said you were good, gorgeous even, but she had nothing to compare you to. I snorted again. Yeah, unlike you, stupid. She rolled her eyes. Yes, Frank. I had a great experience when I got married, as did Aaron. And yes, Paula, God rest her soul, was always a bit of a prude right up to the end, just like you. But like you said, death changes people. What bloody nerve that woman has, I thought. Are you really going to try this? With what I know, you can't be that stupid. Becca muttered, You only know what I've told you, Frank, but that doesn't mean you know the truth. Becca. Aaron's tone fluctuated between confusion and concern. What are you talking about? She took his hand in hers and sighed. Yeah, I lied to save the day, Aaron. Twice, actually, to you and Frank. It shouldn't have come to this, but... She shook her head. Honestly, I can't believe he could sully her memory like that. You're a lying fool. I'm not the one who made her break her vows. Becca waved her hand and rolled her eyes. I didn't make her do it either, Frank. She wanted to. I let you talk. Now be quiet, it's my turn. She turned to Aaron again, keeping her eyes on him, and spoke in a low, soothing tone, like a snake charmer. Yep. When I told you that Paula wanted to try out another man, I misrepresented what Frank knew. She had mentioned the idea to him in passing, but he thought it was all theoretical. Did you ever wonder what it would have been like if we hadn't been virgins when we started dating? That sort of thing. What? Please, honey, understand me. I was trying to do something nice for my friend, and I knew... She gave me an angry look. I knew Frank was too inflexible to let her be as happy as she deserved to be. And she knew you were too loyal to him to make the right decision. He started to interrupt, but she shushed him and continued. You're such a good man. Don't get me wrong. So is Frank. Paula loved him, and for good reason. I know she did. But you're also a socialite, and he's not. I've never cheated on you, and I know you've never cheated on me. However, we have both agreed in the past that while fidelity is important, it is no more or less important than all other vows. Paula and Frank didn't agree on that, at least not until the very end, when she saw how much she had missed out on in her youth because of her sanctimony, and she wanted to fix it. So, I told you that Frank had already tentatively agreed if she found someone he trusted. And who could he trust more than you? Aaron's jaw dropped open, then slammed shut sharply. He swallowed a few times, then said hoarsely, Frank, you have to believe me. I didn't. Becca told me you agreed to give it to Paula because you trusted me. Yeah. She let me believe that you said yes. I didn't know, man. I know you didn't know. I also know she's not telling you everything. She didn't tell you. That's when Jenny found her voice. Wait. Dad, if you weren't okay with it, why did you agree to it? I sighed. I had asked myself that question many times over the past 10 months, but the answer never changed. Because I loved your mom, kid. But by then, she wasn't your mom anymore. What does that mean? She had become fickle, easily angered, flighty, irresponsible, everything she never was before the tumor. The pain hasn't been severe yet, but her behavior has changed dramatically. I truly believe that if an inappropriate person, someone she really trusted and who was willing to abuse that trust, had worked on her enough, your mom might have decided that she wanted to have an affair herself as part of her to-do list. She was already a different person. So when the three of them came to me and asked my permission for a one-time pass, I knew exactly what would happen if I said no. She'd get upset and angry. Maybe just pout and stammer, but I think she would do it anyway. And then I would have to decide whether to divorce my wife, who I knew only had a few months to live, and subject what little was left of the woman I loved to all of this, or let her live through it, let you and Will live through it, even live through it myself. On top of that, Becca obligingly offered to, as you put it, keep the balance. So I didn't even have that option. Everything had to be fair in Paula's eyes. Well, in Paula's eyes, after being blindsided by Becky's ambition. Her ambition? Aaron shifted his gaze to the two people he had trusted unconditionally for decades and realized how foolish it was to misplace that trust in at least one of us. What is he talking about, Becca? She tilted her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. It might have been an impressive display of contrition if one had been inclined to believe it. But I wasn't. I said I lied twice, Aaron. Once to Paula and to you, the other to Frank. When you left for your date with Becca, I went to their house as we agreed to take care of him. I had a hard time getting him to open the door. He didn't want to be with me. I realized that. Snake smiled at me, baring his fangs. He was always so devoted to Paula. She loved it, and so did I. She took a dramatic breath before turning to Aaron again. So we sat down together, and I apologized for my part in all of this. Said that yes, I lied to you, and that he shouldn't blame you for all of this. If he should blame anyone, let him blame me, but I was only trying to help my friend. Becca bit her lower lip for a moment. I think it was a nice touch. It actually emphasized her annoyance. And then I told him another lie to make him feel better. Said I had an ulterior motive, that I always liked him. Said I was hurt that all these years he'd rejected me in favor of Paula. And I wanted to see what I'd missed. Paula always said he was great in bed. She glanced at me and smiled radiantly. It wasn't a lie. She really always said you were great, and that's why I volunteered to comfort him. Aaron looked at me, then at her. But it was a lie? She nodded. The part about me wanting him, yes. I've never looked at anyone but you, Aaron, since we've been together. I laughed out loud, and Becca gave me a weak smile for my efforts. I'm sorry, Frank, I'm not trying to hurt you, but it would be best if I came clean now before more damage is done to our friendship or your family. I never wanted anyone but Aaron, and... My former best friend interrupted her. Wait, you said you lied twice. But you told me that you both slept together that night, that he wasn't good, and... I'm sorry, Frank. Oh, it's all right. Like your devoted wife said, it's better to come clean now, right? Minimize the damage? Yes. Aaron had spent enough time in court to realize that the investigation was leading to disaster, and I'd spent enough time with him to know most of his blind spots. The biggest one, of course, was Becca's. In the spirit of honesty, then, let me say that everything Becca has said so far is true. Or, at the very least, what she told me as we sat together at my kitchen table. She lied to you about my enthusiasm, obviously lied to me about being attracted to me, and she and I had agreed that even though we weren't going to make love, we would pretend to make love so as not to upset you, or, more importantly, Paula. So, she lied 3 times, not twice, but it's easy to lose count when you lie so much, right, Becca? Never mind, the question was rhetorical. I stood up to stretch my legs and noticed, among the boxes Jenny still hadn't unpacked, a picture of my departed wife. Unable to suppress a sad smile, I picked it up and examined it for a while before placing it on the pile of metal and particle board that vaguely resembled an end table next to the sofa bed. Facing our friends, of course. Unless that's 2 lies instead of 3. Aaron, do you remember? I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago when Becca suggested you take up swinging? It got her attention. She immediately went stiff as a board. Oh, I see your lovely wife remembers. He glanced at her, then back at me. Yes, I remember mentioning it. And what was it? Your answer, if I remember it correctly, was this. It'll be cold in hell before I agree to that. Paula and Becca talked about it too, and Paula told me that Becca was very disappointed by it. She snapped, "Yeah, but in the end I agreed with it. It's okay to just fantasize, and it's..." Jesus, Frank, do you really want to have this conversation in front of your daughter? Oh, don't even try that crap. You got her into this, not me. I'd leave sleeping dogs alone if you did too. I want you to remember, everything that's happening right now is your fault, and you're not going to get out of it that easily. I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Anyway, did you know that she and Paula talked about it again just before the 3 of you ambushed me? Her words had been something along the lines of, "You know, if the 4 of us can make it work, I'm going to try to get Aaron involved again. I mean, we already have, right?" That's a lie. She glanced at her husband and found, to her horror, that he was staring at her too. Really, Aaron? Could it be that she had hinted at it after she had things worked out with Paula? After all, we both know now that she lied to you about things going well. He went from staring at her intently to looking at her fiercely. You see, I think she only lied twice after all. The first time was when she told you earlier that she'd gotten prior authorization from me before approaching you. The second was not when she told me she found me attractive, but when she told me that she and I had evened the score. Because she actually found me attractive. She really did want to sleep with me, that's what Paula told me. Becca grinned, but her eyes didn't match her tone. I saw fear in them, not outrage. God, Frank, of course I told Paula that. Wanted her to feel nothing but good about the whole thing. If I'd known you'd turn out to be so fragile, I would have... That made me laugh out loud. Oh, Rebecca, the problem with bringing someone with poor impulse control into your schemes is that they can't keep a secret. She blushed, realizing how much she had unwisely confided to a stranger who looked and sounded like her best friend. Barely having agreed to all of this, I asked her why she wanted to do it. Not so much that it would upset her, but just sort of out of general curiosity. And that's when she told me everything. Becca told Paula that your love life has gotten stale, that it lacked variety, and that she really wanted to be with me. Apparently, she put even more stock in that than Paula did in her to-do list. What's more, she told me that Becca had been complaining about boredom, even before Paula was diagnosed. In fact, a couple years before that. That's not true. I love Aaron. I shrugged. Both statements could be true. You can love him and be bored with your sex life. Paula and I looked at Jenny. Well, we did what we could to keep things fresh. She and I gave a synchronized wince. No daughter wants to hear her father discuss his sex life with her mom, and I sure as hell didn't want to talk about it. Oh, come on. You two were both such prudes that... Stop saying that. My daughter, glowing with anger, stepped into the fray. Mom wasn't a prude. Becca tried to speak in a conciliatory tone, like talking to a small child. Oh, honey, it's okay. I love your mom. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way she was. But she wasn't. God, Jenny looked at me. I'm sorry, Dad, I have to say this. Mom wasn't a prude. She was very positive about love. But she was also glad it was just Dad. She told me that back in the day. You know, when we talked to her. Of course she did, Jenny. She wanted you to follow in her footsteps. I'm glad she did. No, she didn't. Shut up and listen, or at least stop putting her down, Becca. Not Aunt Becca, just Becca. We've talked about this a lot over the years, about, the choices I could have made, the ones I've made. And she told me that she was content with what she chose for herself, the fact that she'd always just been with Daddy. But she also didn't, Another glance at me. I sighed. No father wants to hear his daughter talk about her sex life. When I told her that I hadn't made the same choice, she backed me up. Said I had to make my own way, like she and you did. She never spoke ill of you, but you were always nagging when you tried to be cool Aunt Becca if it was just you and me in the house. And I didn't want to make her choices, but I didn't want to make yours either. Even a couple years ago, she told me she was proud of me for making a choice instead of blindly following either of you. That I was sexually active, but only with real guys. Mostly. No, I really didn't want to hear that. I felt myself blushing. And she told me about how she and Dad had this, exciting relationship. No prude would do what she and Dad did. Or buy things like that. Okay, honey, I think that's enough. My face is burning up. I think Jenny would have found it amusing if circumstances had turned out differently. I turned to look at my best friend and my favorite wife's worst betrayer, both of whom were the same person. You get the point. She wasn't a prude. She just didn't spread her legs for every damn guy with a pulse like you. But that wasn't enough, and you needed to be proven right that she'd been nothing but an unsophisticated little church mouse all along. And if that meant you could restart your sex life too, well, all the better, right? Becca jumped to her feet. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you lie about me. I loved her, and I just wanted to do something nice for her before she left. I'm sorry if I hurt your ego, but if you loved her like I did, you'd... Stop. Just shut up, Becca. Aaron spoke, his voice eerily calm. Stop lying. If anyone's ego is hurt here, it's yours. I've seen the way you've looked at Frank in the past, but I didn't pay attention because I thought you were loyal to me. It was just a look. We both did. So I don't buy that I never wanted to be with him crap. Not anymore. He stood up and headed for the door, then looked at her over his shoulder. Are you coming or not? Then at me. He opened his mouth to speak, a pained expression on his face. He shook his head and turned to Jenny. I'm sorry I got you into this, baby. I should have... Another shake of his head. Then he opened the door and stepped out, Becca following him, burning me with glances. Jenny closed and locked the door. Daddy, I'm sorry. She shook her head. For everything. I shouldn't have gotten involved. I was just worried about you, and so was Uncle Frank, and I wouldn't stop bugging him until he told me, and I'm so sorry. There were tears in her eyes. My daughter held out her arms to me like she did as a child if she did something wrong and needed reassurance. Of course, I hugged her and told her I loved her and forgave her. What else is a father supposed to do? After that, we sat and talked for a while longer. Some about what she had learned, some about how I was doing, some about her new job or other more neutral topics. We studiously avoided any topics related to her sex life or her mom's life, except for one question she asked just before I left. If it wasn't brain cancer, if it was something else, something that didn't change her behavior, so straightforward. Would you go along with it if she asked? I was silent for a few moments. It was a question I'd asked myself several times since she'd gone to Aaron's that night. I don't think she would have asked. But what if she had? I didn't share it with anyone. There was no one I wanted to share it with, and certainly not Becca or Aaron. Shortly before your mom died, she had one of her moments of clarity. You've seen a few of them, the ones where she was just your mom. And during one of them, when it was just her and me, she looked at me and said, I'm sorry, Frank, I shouldn't have. I wasn't thinking straight, And then she cried and asked me to forgive her. And I did. I told her what I told you, that it's not her. It's a tumor. And I wasn't just trying to make her feel better, I actually believe it. So the answer to your question is, no, I wouldn't have agreed to that, because she wouldn't have asked me to. That seemed to satisfy Jenny. She reached out and squeezed my hand, and we both reminisced about the woman who meant so much to us, which she really was. I finished my drink and stood up. I need to go home and get some sleep. Are you coming to visit soon? Sure, Dad. She waited until I got to the door and said quietly, in the voice every father knows, the voice of a little girl who still needs to be calmed down a little. Daddy? Yes, Princess? I love you. And I love you too. Always, okay? Jenny nodded, a mixture of regret and relief on her face. She hurt me, even if she didn't mean to, but I still loved her. She'll always be my princess. And she knows I still love her mom. 3 years later, Marilyn called out to me, "Honey, there's someone waiting for you at the door." I headed for the front door of our apartment, enjoying the view that my beautiful young wife's back gave me. "Hello, beautiful." "Who?" "Oh." On the doorstep stood my oldest friend in the world. Actually, an ex-friend. I can't say I hadn't seen him in the previous 3 years. After all, we still had a mutual group of friends. But I don't think we'd exchanged more than a dozen words in that time, other than formal greetings. He looked older now. Sure, we both look older. We're both in our 50s, but he looked like another 5 years had crept up in there somewhere. "Hello, Frank." "Aaron." I kissed Marilyn on the cheek. She smiled at me, gave our visitor an icy stare, and left without another word. Early in our relationship, I told her this story to avoid awkward conversations later on if we ever crossed paths with Aaron or Becca. "What do you want? Can I come in?" "I'd like to talk." No. Come on, man, we were friends. We were for over 30 years. Don't I deserve a little time? I know I hurt you, but I wasn't trying to. Becca was manipulating both of us." I wondered for a moment. He wanted some time? Fine. "Not here. O'Malley's in half an hour." "Really? Okay. Yeah, sounds great. I'll see you there." I told Marilyn I'd be back in a few hours, grabbed my jacket from the closet, got in the car, and drove off. O'Malley's was our favorite place to eat, the most appropriate place for our last conversation. When I pulled up, he had already taken a seat in a booth and ordered my favorite beer. In the nearly 4 years since the funeral, I have never found someone with whom I had the kind of relationship I had with him. 3 decades of history is hard to make up for. He was the one who asked to talk, and I let him talk. "So, you got remarried?" "For 3 months now." "And moved in?" "Yeah, the kids are settled. Jenny's engaged, and Will's wife is expecting their first child. A boy." Aaron frowned. "I've talked to Will, too, and both he and Jenny have cut the godparents out of their lives. There's little chance of them returning to the nest, and the old house, well, I'd rather make new memories in a new place." "Makes sense." He drummed his fingers on the table, clearly trying to find the strength to get to the real topic of conversation. "Frank, I'm sorry. For everything. For Becca and what she did. For me and Paula. For talking to Jenny. For everything. I can't apologize enough." "No, you can't." "I know. I know that, man. But like I said, Becca manipulated both of us. And it's been years. I miss hanging out with you." I couldn't resist taking a jab at him. "Especially after the divorce, right?" He wrinkled his nose. "Yeah. I mean, no, I missed you before that. But the divorce put things in perspective. After everything I'd learned that night, things weren't the same anymore. Knowing what she'd done, I was always there for her, and that's no way to live." "I agree. That's why I'm not interested in rekindling our friendship." "Why not?" I managed not to yell in his face. "Because you use my wife." Instead, I said, "Because I prefer to surround myself with people I can rely on." "But you can count on me!" I thought I could. I really did. But then, well, I don't have to tell you. You know what you did. They told me you were okay with it, and I thought it was true. And here it is, a lie telling me I was right to cut him out of my life. No, you didn't. Yes, you did! No, you wanted to believe it, and that's not the same thing. I took a sip of beer. You always told me, a lawyer never asks a question unless he already knows the answer. You did the opposite. You knew the answer, so you didn't ask the question. What? Leaning forward, I growled, "You knew what kind of man I was, what my views on loyalty were, how special it was to me that Paula chose me to." I shook my head. You knew I would never have agreed to that even roughly. If asked, I would have said an emphatic no. You knew that. For once, Aaron at least did me a small favor by not lying. He knew what he did and didn't do. However, to twist the knife, I continued. All you had to do was tell them I'm required to think about it and call me if you had any doubts. But you didn't have any doubts, did you? You knew me. You'd known me for 30 years. And you knew what I was going to say? Well, you didn't. You chose not to because you knew what I'd say. Instead, Paula told me you were drooling. You saw a chance for the first time in over 20 years to have sex with someone other than your wife, and you could tell yourself it was a mission of mercy, so you did exactly what Becca did and decided to go for it. Buddy, I told you never to call me that again. I'm not your buddy. A buddy should have, at the very least, damn it, consult his friend before agreeing to something like this. A buddy should have cared more about his friend, who was seeing the love of his life die, and should have been more supportive of him in that pain rather than making it worse. So no, you're not my buddy. Maybe you used to be, but you're not now, just like I'm not yours. Frank. A buddy wouldn't keep information about how much of a cheater Becca was, about how badly she wanted to use his buddy, how she was willing to manipulate her dying best friend into switching with her without her husband's knowledge. The buddy had to let his best friend know that she was planning this as a stepping stone to a full-blown swing. The change of subject seemed to surprise him. The tone, on the other hand, surprised him even more. It stopped being an accusation and turned into something else, a confession, or maybe a villain's monologue, depending on one's point of view. A buddy, a real one who doesn't stab someone he's loved like a brother since childhood, would have warned me that your wife was messing around with Paula, that if the swinging didn't happen after your mission of mercy, maybe she'd leave you anyway. I pulled out an envelope and slapped it on the table. And a buddy, a real fully committed buddy, would tell you about the private investigator he paid to follow this manipulative fool. He would have shown you all the interesting pictures the private investigator took while you were busy mourning the loss of your friendship. The friendship you killed because you thought you could get away with it. Nay. Aaron looked at me in horror, then at the envelope, then back at me. Yeah, that's right. She started cheating on you a couple months after the funeral, and I covered it up. I planned to send them to you anonymously when the affair got so bad that you couldn't forgive her for anything. But then you decided to drag my daughter, your goddaughter, you fool, into this sordid drama. Although maybe I should thank you for that. Then I laid it all out in the open. I chuckled, and he looked up at me again. Well, almost all of it. I held back on the pictures, of course. Figured I'd rather watch the two of you destroy your own marriage than help destroy it with hard evidence. And by God, that's what happened. How long did you two waddle together? How much would you have saved on your divorce if you had proof and not just suspicion? Probably a lot. I guess we'll never know. I'd almost forgotten how much I wanted this confrontation. How it sustained me when I found out the truth. How it helped me play my part at the funeral, to be polite to Becca and rude to Frank so that he would hopefully corkscrew and she would think she'd gotten away with it. Forgetting it was even easier after the confrontation at Jenny's apartment, seeing how the seeds of distrust had been sown then, and knowing that they would almost certainly bear fruit. It was incredibly satisfying, and I decided it was enough for me. Enough to hide the envelope in a shoebox in my closet. Enough to move on. Enough to move past my pain, and eventually let my daughter set me up with Marilyn, her co-worker. Enough to be happy again in my new life. But then Aaron tried to force his way into my life again. I stood up as he stared at me with his mouth open. I don't want to be your friend again. And now, I'm sure you don't want to be my friend either. It's true that I miss my friend, the guy I thought I could always count on, but I lost him before I lost my wife. I've moved on, Aaron. I suggest you do the same. Marilyn will never replace Paula, and I don't want her to. I just need her to be someone I love and who loves me. Eventually, I'm sure I'll find a new best friend, too. Maybe one who will truly become the friend you were meant to be. With those words, I threw in a few dollars to cover the bill and left my stunned former friend to ponder his sins. As I drove home, I thought about his sins and mine. Becky's, too. His main sin is simple. Opportunism. Almost understandable because of his ex-wife's influence. But it was against me, his best friend, and that I couldn't forgive. However, he's also right that it was Becca who set us all up. She's the one who set this whole thing in motion. To an outside observer, it might have seemed like she'd gotten off easy with the divorce after all the devastation she'd wrought. I knew different. I knew how much she'd lost when she inexorably gave in to temptation. Becca loved Aaron, even though she was bored with their love life. Or at least that's what she thought. Even if she didn't love him, she loved the hassle-free life her marriage provided. Even with spousal support, she had to go back to work with a degree she hadn't used in 20 years once her beauty began to fade. The stress of the divorce didn't help either. The last time I saw her, she had aged as much as Aaron, if not more. I'd heard how hard she fought for her marriage, but had to try to convince Aaron that I'd lied, while simultaneously trying to hide her own recent affair. She just couldn't handle it. Allowing her to cheat with Paula allowed her to manipulate him easily, but only because he trusted her. Those days were long gone. Becky's affair and her desperate attempts to cover it up, which made him even more suspicious, had put a nail in the lid of their marriage, even if he'd only gotten proof of it a few minutes ago. I'm sure Aaron would have even more questions when he looked through the thick stack of photos and documents in the envelope. Who was the young stud in the photos? Why would he want to seduce an almost married woman? Where would a college graduate with no prospects and no steady job get the money to indulge her with wine and dinner? Judging from the photos, they'd been carrying on an affair for months, and the private investigator's notes repeatedly mentioned how odd it was that the man who horned in on Aaron always made it as easy as possible to get pictures. Blinds left ajar, lingering kisses at doorways, blatant groping in public. Why? And then the stud disappeared almost as quickly as he'd appeared, moving to another state just as Aaron began looking for evidence of Becky's infidelity. At the moment when Aaron needed proof the most, he could only gather suspicion. Had the young man somehow gotten a warning? And Becca? These are all good questions that he'll never get answers to. I realized one thing, some secrets I would take with me to my grave. The end.